Hi, and welcome to New God Sunday School. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee, and Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, starring Adam Starr and the Solar Legion. All three of those books are available by following the links in the show notes below. This is number 16 of Mr. Miracle, with 18 being the final issue. So we're sort of seeing the death throes of the Mr. Miracle comic. We have a really nice cover here. I like this assortment of bug-like villains, like the bugs that we saw in New Gods. And, maybe there's some glimmer of hope that these are somehow connected to that. And then we have some of the extended cast on the side, and then we're featuring the newest addition to the cast, Mr. Miracle and Big Barda's apprentice, Shiloh Norman, who was introduced in the previous issue. So we have Mr. Miracle, drawn with a sort of Captain America mask instead of his standard full face mask. Just one of those little glitches from Jack Kirby, who is working on a number of comics simultaneously and working pretty fast. And also a little bit on autopilot when it comes to this particular comic ever since, he was sort of instructed to make it less intelligent and more kid-friendly. Inside the issue, Mr. Miracle still has his regular mask, so it's like it's just sort of an honest mistake here from somebody who spent years and years working on a lot of characters that did have that kind of face mask. Take any ordinary youngster from the inner city and toss him among an extraordinary supergroup to live with them, to work with them, and become one of them is a heady experience that may cause the boy some disquieting and hair-raising moments he may not soon forget. Let's take a look in on our super trainee, Shiloh Norman, a very special addition to Mr. Miracle, Super Escape Artist. I like the detail of covering up the, background title lettering with the word balloons. Feels like it's, a sophisticated design choice on the part of Mike Royer. It's sort of up to him to letter this stuff however he wants, and he chose to sort of create a nice little like 3D effect by putting this figure and the word balloons over the title. Edited, written, and drawn by Jack Kirby, lettered, inked by Mike Royer. Kind of an interesting premise, a character in real time taking on, like a super character, taking on an apprentice and training him, teaching him everything you know. And with the added twist that Barda is doing the same thing. So potentially Shiloh Norman could become the ultimate new god, having, the strength of Big Barda and the tricks and technique of Mr. Miracle, a wizard warrior. Mr. Miracle's teaching him, the basics, how to get out of a pair of handcuffs. If you're teaching somebody to be an escape artist, that seems like that's sort of where you start. Get it over with, you two. I've prepared a special powers demonstration for Shiloh. Take it easy, Barda. We just bought that truck. Mr. Miracle can't do that, but Barda can, and maybe soon Shiloh can too. Shiloh, I'm waiting for you to put that simple escape trick I taught you into action. I don't understand it. That thing I saw, it's cut out again. So that's, sort of the ongoing thing in this issue, that Shiloh is trying to do these different escape tricks while seeing these weird giant insect creatures in the corners of the room. And maybe part of the distraction of that allows him to not get too intimidated by this escape trick he's trying to do. And so he very easily does it, more easily than he had done previously. He's really getting the hang of this. And so he escapes from it without even realizing, which anybody who's, had to learn some sort of, difficult technique kind of task, I can attest to that from, inking and drawing and the different, things you need to learn there that when you're not when you're not concentrating too hard on it and just kind of let yourself relax, things just seem to fall into place. And so that's what happens here for Shiloh. And now it's Barda's turn. Listen carefully, Shiloh. Lifting this 200-pound weight or a 2-ton truck is part of a simple, basic principle. Barda, look, so that's interesting to me. I got the sense that, Barda's special powers, it's more than just building muscle. It's almost sort of like a mind over matter kind of thing. But Shiloh sees another one of those bugs. He runs towards it, but it disappears as suddenly as it arrives. Now We get these chapter breaks that we've been seeing recently. The bug creature captures Oberon and Barda. Shiloh goes to help them, but they're gone, disappeared along with the bug. And he's telling Mr. Miracle about it. And now Mr. Miracle believes him that it wasn't just, he wasn't just seeing things. And Mr. Miracle has the proof. He does this probe that shows that there's tiny, tiny footprints. It's a gimmick Kirby's used before, this idea of somebody seeming to appear out of nowhere, but actually is just shrinking and growing at a super fast rate. So they sort of walk into the room and they're tiny, you don't even notice them, and then they grow, kind of like Ant-Man powers, and then they shrink back down. And so it seems like they appear and disappear, and now here's one of them. And these bug creatures, they're kind of cool looking. Not quite as cool as the bug that were in New Gods, but still, like a fun design at a time when Jack Kirby's villain designs are sort of a little bit on autopilot. And so Shiloh shrinks along with this guy, and now, he's in the Bugaverse. He's in this, microverse where these bugs live, their sort of natural habitat. And now he's showing what he can do. His judo techniques, which he brought with him, which he already had by the time he met Barda and Mr. Miracle. And of course, talking about the sort of novelty of a trainee superhero, Robin was that for Batman. But the introduction of Robin, just because of the way comics worked back then, is so quick and resolved so quickly within the issue of his introduction that, within that one issue, he can already do pretty much everything Batman does. Where, this is a Jack Kirby comic. We get the sense that it's going to happen over the course of a number of issues, and we'll presumably watch Shiloh Norman, sort of grow into the role of superhero in a way we didn't see with Robin back in 1940. Where did you take my friends? Talk. You'll learn soon enough, human, when Professor Egg deals with you. Shiloh defeats this guy, and now he's chasing them. I really like this panel where he comes to this crossroads. Really, nicely drawn. Very interesting. This issue, like the previous one, the drawings and compositions in general are a little more spare, a little less lush, the way the sort of prime issues of this series are very, illustratively lush. The inking seems to be on point, where in the previous issue it seemed to falter a little bit, and I suggested a possible theory that maybe D. Bruce Berry was doing a lot of the assisting, but here it looks a bit stronger. Still not, and so then we get this other bug attacking him, kind of interesting looking Kirby monster. Shiloh defeats it, using one of Mr. Miracle's tricks, some kind of instant flame that Mr. Miracle's little circuits work just fine. These few I've learned to make have saved my life. So Shiloh's learning how to make little hidden circuits that can do different things, and one of them is flame. And if we were still in the era where this comic is connected to the larger New Gods story, it would seem to me that Mr. Miracle is teaching Shiloh how to make a mother box. So he's sort of being Hyman for Shiloh the way Hyman was for Mr. Miracle. Now he meets another bug. This one's kind of cool too. He launches like little spiky missiles. Shiloh evades them. And again, the bulk of this issue is the adventures of Shiloh Norman. So it's interesting, going from a comic that sort of centers around Mr. Miracle to, his kid sidekick is taking center stage. And it does make sense when, later Grant Morrison and maybe other creators too that I'm not aware of make Shiloh Norman the new Mr. Miracle, that it seems like sort of where we're headed, from the look of this, that Shiloh is the new star of the book. And Shiloh is now doing a sonic earth shock to defeat this bug. So yeah, he's a quick study. He's mastering these techniques pretty quickly, and he meets the big bad, Professor Egg. Not a bad design either. Not earth-shattering, but not too bad. And Professor Egg makes Shiloh grow, and he's going to crush him within this cave, sort of echoing the cover image. Before I eliminate him, I shall use his traits to create one of the new species. That's the basis of my work, Mr. Intruder, utilizing the molecular structure of man and insect to fashion beings like Atu. Who would think that one such as I sprang from the lowly ant? So Mr. Egg is a human being, some sort of scientist, I assume, who is turning ants into these sort of intelligent creatures with different specialties and things. Reminds me of the Deep Six, Slig, how he could turn like a shark into a shark man and things like that. The Island of Dr. Moreau, something that Kirby's been riffing on for a long time. It's a shame that we're not tied into the Apocalypse New Gods thing, because maybe some version of this was going to happen in the Apocalypse New Gods story. I mean, Jack Kirby did have a bunch of giant intelligent bugs, but maybe there was some plan at some point in the New Gods story that one of the Apocalypse people was going to turn the way they turned the creatures of the sea against mankind. Maybe they were going to turn the insects around us against us, and imagine how outmanned we would be in a situation like that. So now they're preparing the last little thing. We have this cocoon that is a return to who Jack Kirby called Cocoon Man, but was renamed him for the published version, and then renamed again Adam Warlock. But this idea of a cocoon with these little things on the side that's going to gestate into some new creature, and Shiloh Norman has a role to play in it. Mr. Egg is pointing his little machine at Shiloh, and have you drawn the desired molecules from the intruder, Professor? Yes, Atu. I shall now blend those molecules with those of the larva. It's done. The larva cocoon is hardening. Inside a change is taking place. Soon it will emerge fully grown. And so it cracks open. We see the hands, and we assume, yes, we're going to see some hybrid that uses, part of Shiloh Norman's essence. And so now Jack Kirby has done this, design of like a bug monster. Shiloh is completely freaked out by the whole thing. The thing is horrible yet familiar, too familiar. Shiloh screams louder. It's maddening, unbearable. Shiloh's screams go on. And Wizard of Oz ending. Shiloh wakes up. The whole thing was a dream. Shiloh could have sworn it was real, but yeah, it's kind of comforting that it was all just a dream, and now he's back. And Ted Brown introduces them to Professor X, the famous master of illusion. It's a living, folks, but I'm quite good at it. Looking a lot like Mr. Egg. I'm assuming that's pronounced Professor X. Maybe it's Professor Exa or Professor Xe, but if it is Professor X, that's interesting that Kirby has introduced in his new universe a bald master of illusion, a bald mentalist who is named Professor X. Don't look so impressed, Shiloh. All I really do is make people see things that aren't there. Yeah? Things that aren't there? Or are they? So it's like maybe the dream was prophetic, and this Professor X is actually Professor Egg, and he's all the stuff that he saw in his dream is actually going to happen, but we'll never know. This is an all right comic. I'm not a fan of the "it was all a dream" thing, especially when we're talking about like a Jack Kirby series where there's only 18 issues, and prior to this, every issue was essential, like amazing, and best of all time comics. And now we're into a thing where we'll spend an entire issue showing the adventures of a character. Oh, and by the way, it was just a dream. It didn't happen. I feel like superhero comics had sort of grown beyond this sort of thing. And, I love The Wizard of Oz. And just because, it was all a dream, Dorothy, doesn't mean that, everything you experience in that story is something. It feels like, Kirby was doing this story and that was just kind of like, okay, here's a way I can end it in 2 pages. In the course of the issue, you're seeing Shiloh Norman, do all kinds of amazing, great things. So even that aspect gets taken away too, because it's like, okay, well, maybe Shiloh hasn't learned as much as we think he has because this is just his dream. So, he could have powers in his dream that he doesn't have in real life. So we've really, as a result of this story, of this comic, the story has not moved forward 1 inch. We have not learned very much about our characters, and especially the new character, Shiloh Norman. A lot of real estate was devoted to him, but we've really learned very little about him, except for his dream life. We have learned a bit about his dream life. And yeah, what could have been a cool addition to this new Mr. Miracle mythology of an army of mutant bugs taking over the earth is taken away as well. unless, the next issue we find out what happens with this guy or 2 issues later. But I know for a fact that we don't. So it's just another dead end in a series of dead ends. I read this comic as an adult, long after its initial publication. So I have sort of, an adult's reaction to it. But Kirby was instructed to make his comics more enjoyable and understandable for kids and make that the sole focus of what he's doing. And Tom Spurgeon, the comics reporter, he would talk about this issue, and that I think this is the first Jack Kirby comic he ever read. When he was a little kid, bought it, I think, fresh off the rack, and it blew his mind. He loved it. He thought it was the coolest thing ever. So maybe Jack, understood the assignment. In my evaluation of this comic, I kind of, give it some bonus points. And we have the letters column. Somebody mentions like, hey, whatever happened to all those Apocalypse guys? And Steve Sherman says, oh yeah, we addressed that in the previous issue. And so now it's, countdown to the end. The next issue is going to be the last non-Apocalypse, non-New Gods issue where there's no mother boxes or anything. The next issue is going to be the final one of those. And then the issue after that is going to be a big return to the New Gods stuff, as part of the finale for the comic. I guess at that point, maybe Jack was like, okay, if the comic is ending anyway, I'm going to do it my way. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee, and Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, The Adventures of Adam Star and the Solar Legion. All 3 of those books are available by following the links in the show notes below. I'll see you next time for New God Sunday School.